We're glad to have you back here with us as we continue on this September 11th, and this is certainly a familiar name and a familiar face. It is former co-anchor and still a dear friend, Rachel Oesch. Rachel, so good to see you.
It's so good to see you, Chip. Thank you so much for letting me come back. I know this is kind of a somber moment to talk about 9/11, but I'm always glad to be back at News 12 and see all the folks here.
When you and I got the word about what was happening, we had already come off a pretty hectic news cycle. We had the funeral of Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Donald Bond on the 10th day of September, which was emotionally wrenching for us. And then when the first plane hit the Trade Center on September 11th, we thought what?
Confusion. I mean, there had been a lot of planes that had crashed in New York City into tall buildings. A lot of times a pilot would have a heart attack. So this was not unknown. So we were in the newsroom. We were getting ready for the noon show because we had finished the morning show. We still had cut-ins. So we're going back and forth between the national CBS News and here at the local station. And we saw on the feed, before anyone else did, we saw the New York feed where there was a plane going towards the World Trade Center. And we thought that was strange, but we didn't understand it. Again, confusion. Then we saw it hit the World Trade Center, and we still thought confusion, heart attack, what is this about? Nobody knew. We certainly didn't think terrorist attack because remember, Chip, up until this moment, there had been hijackings.
Yeah.
But those didn't result in people dying, the terrorists dying along with the hijacking. They would just hijack the plane, land the plane, and most of the passengers got out alive.
Not in this case, 2,977 people dead from 90 countries around the world. And when you and I saw each other immediately after that second plane hit, we were white as a ghost. I mean, it's like, what is happening? Literally, it's one of those moments where, at least for a moment, the world stopped turning.
So much fear. And I mean, these are pictures you're looking at now where people just still didn't know what was going on. The evacuation of people, not knowing what was happening. But I remember, I wouldn't say that I was filled with terror until I saw all of these little black dots coming out of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And we zoomed in and saw these were hundreds of people jumping to their death. That is when I was filled with terror because it takes, you have to be in a dire situation to jump from a building.
No kidding.
Like that.
And you were pregnant with Sarah, your first daughter, and you were well into your pregnancy. What, you were 8.5 months?
Yes, she was born 5 weeks later, actually, from 9/11, and it did impact her life. She was valedictorian for high school, and she started her valedictorian speech talking about the fact that she was born when planes crashed into buildings, and she graduated during a pandemic. So those children that were born at 9/11, it impacted them. And I mean, a month later she was born, and I have the newspaper.
We're going to show that here in just a moment.
From that
make sure
day.
you get a good close-up of that here in a few minutes. It certainly, and a lot of times people think that we're just emotionless, that we don't really have a buy-in to what's going on in the news and the weather and the things that we bring you. Nothing could be further from the truth. That day, we were not just conduits, we were citizens. We weren't Republicans, we weren't Democrats, we weren't independents, we were Americans. And it was really unique to see how in this building alone, everybody came together. Everybody came together. And on a bigger scope, everybody came together in the community and in the country.
And in the whole world. The friends that I had in Germany, the friends that I had in France, everybody was an American on 9/11. Everybody felt that they were attacked the same way we were attacked. And there was so much fear because, you know, the third plane and then the fourth plane. And then we had, which I was going to show you, was this just kept going. So this is the Chattanooga Times Free Press from a month later on October the 19th. This is the day my daughter was born. So I wanted to have the Chattanooga Times Free Press from the day she was born. This was the anthrax scare. So it just kept going with these terrorist attacks. It didn't end with the planes. It was just constantly one more thing that we were afraid of.
Kind of like a what's next.
What's next? And then it was, you know, in schools, everybody was afraid. In churches, everybody was afraid. There was just
you and I went to a
fear.
church and prayed.
We went to a church and prayed.
It was certainly it was a unique time and certainly a very scary time. And you got to to remember, everybody's got smartphones now. You didn't have smartphones back in 2001. The phones, they made calls and they took calls, and that was about it.
Exactly.
People got their news differently then, and it was a pleasure and it was a challenge to bring the news to those of you who were here with us on that fateful September day.
Absolutely. You know, communication was different back then. You really did need the news to find out what was happening. I didn't have a smartphone, which is really strange. My husband had a flip phone, but I didn't have a phone at all. And I was pregnant, 8 months pregnant without a phone. And I remember also how scary that was on 9/11 because we couldn't communicate with anybody when the FCC shut everything down.
Yep. Ground stoppage for all airlines. The cell networks were suspended. Landlines were kind of tough to isolate as well. And I wish we had more time, Rachel, but we got to go. Next time Rachel comes back, we're going to talk about the birth of her oldest daughter, Sarah, and how somebody wanted to go home and change clothes and put on boots before they went to the hospital, and how someone whose water broke right over here on the air. It's always good to see you. We hope you will come back anytime.
I will. All the time.
You were certainly a treasure, and you helped make it through a very trying day that day. You're the best.
Thank you, Chip.
We'll be right back.